It's a Tuesday evening in March, and you are 54 years old, and you are about to find out what the last 30 years of work actually bought you. Somebody at lunch mentioned his pension forecast. Casually, the way people mention the weather. And it lodged. So now you're sat on the end of the bed with a laptop on your knees, going through a password reset you've started twice before and never finished. The security questions. The code to your phone. A provider whose name you're fairly sure you've been paying since the Blair government. The page loads. You look at the number for a while. Then you do the sum you've been avoiding, the one where you spread it across the years you've got left, and you get an answer that doesn't feel like it can be right. So you do it again. It's the same. Here's the part that should bother everyone. Money has been coming out of your wages for most of the last 30 years, before you ever saw a penny of it. And this is the first time in your life you have ever actually looked. That isn't carelessness. Nobody ever asked you to look. In a minute I'll show you the exact moment this number was decided, and you're going to recognize it, because you were sat right there when it happened. Go back 32 years. You're 22, it's your first proper job, and it's your first morning. There's a folder on the desk in front of you with your name spelled slightly wrong on the front. Somebody from HR is going through it a page at a time, and she is perfectly nice, and she has done this 11 times this month. Contract, emergency contact, the bit about the fire doors, and then a page about the pension. There's a box, and next to the box there's a percentage, already printed, whatever that particular company's scheme happened to use as its standard, a number somebody chose once, for everybody, years before you walked in. You look at it for about 4 seconds. You're 22. You've never had a payslip. Retirement isn't a real place. It's somewhere your granddad lives. And she says the sentence, not unkindly. Just fill in the gap while you find the line to sign. Most people just leave it as it is. So you leave it as it is. That sentence cost you more than anything else anybody said to you that year, and nobody in that room knew it, including her. She wasn't being lazy or careless. Nobody had told her either. Because here's the thing about a number printed on an official form, by an institution, in a folder with your name on it. It does not read as a starting point. It reads as the recommended amount. That's the whole trick, and it isn't a trick anybody designed. It's just what printed numbers do to people who are 22 and slightly nervous and want to seem like they know what they're doing. Now, before you decide this is a story about 1994, the form has changed since. It's genuinely better now. There's a proper legal system called automatic enrolment. You get put into a pension without having to ask for it, which is one of the more quietly decent things this country has done, and it's the reason millions of people have any pension at all. The minimum that goes in is 8% of your qualifying earnings. Some from you, at least 3% from your employer. 8%, a legal minimum, a floor, printed on a form, in a folder, next to a box, and somewhere this morning, somebody is saying the sentence. You leave that job at 26. The pension stays exactly where it is. There's a letter about it, and you mean to deal with it, and you put it on the side with the other post. It follows you to the next flat, then to the one after that. Then it stops coming, because you didn't tell them you'd moved. You've still got that pot, somewhere. You could not tell me the name of the provider today. At 31 you get a proper pay rise, the first one that changes anything. And your life quietly expands to fit it, the way it always does. A better car, a bigger place, a holiday you'd have thought ridiculous 3 years earlier. Everything about your life gets bigger, except one number, which stays exactly where a woman from HR left it in 1994. At 35 there's a hard year. There always is. Maybe a redundancy, maybe a divorce, maybe a baby and a mortgage arriving within 4 months of each other. And you ring up and pause the pension contributions. Just for 6 months. Just until things settle. It's 14 months. And none of that was a decision about your 70s. Every single one of them was a Tuesday, handled sensibly, by a reasonable person doing their best. That's what makes this a good story and a bad situation. There is no moment in it where you did anything stupid. You're about 41 when the first piece of real information reaches you. And it arrives sideways. There's a retirement due at work. A card going round the office. A collection in an envelope. Somebody's printed a banner. Dave's been there 26 years. There's a speech, the usual jokes about him finally getting his lie-ins, and he stands there going slightly red. And afterwards, by the kettle, someone mentions, not unkindly, just as information, that Dave isn't actually stopping. He's going 3 days a week at the garden centre. He'd worked out he had to. You laugh, because everyone does. And you go back to your desk, and for about an hour you think about the word retired, and how everybody in that room had used it about a man who was going straight into another job. Then somebody emails you about something else, and you don't think about it again for 13 years, which brings us up to the Tuesday, and the laptop, and the number. So let's answer the real question. Not how much is in there, is it enough? Enough isn't a feeling, it's been worked out. There are proper standards in this country for what retirement actually costs, And the useful thing about them is they're not written as spreadsheets. They're written as lives. There's a minimum life. Everything works. You eat, the bills are paid, nobody's knocking on the door. But it's all counted. The heating goes on when it needs to, not when you'd like it to. There's no car, so seeing people is a bus timetable and somebody else's convenience. A week away in the UK once a year, if nothing breaks. There's a moderate life, and the difference isn't luxury, it's slack. A car on the drive, so Wednesday belongs to you. A fortnight somewhere warm. Dinner out without a conversation about it first. And there's a comfortable life. 2 holidays. The car replaced when it needs replacing rather than when it finally dies. Money you can hand a grandchild without checking anything. 2 things about those lives that never make it onto the leaflet. The first is what the middle one costs. To generate that moderate life from a pension pot, on top of everything else, you're looking at something in the region of £500,000. Not for the holidays in the second car. For the moderate one. The one with a fortnight in Spain. And the second, quietly rewrites all 3 of them. They assume you own your home outright. No rent, no mortgage, nothing going out at all for the roof over your head. Those figures were calculated for somebody who has already won the hardest financial game in this country. If you're still paying a mortgage at 67, and more people are every year, or if you're renting, you don't need those numbers. You need those numbers plus several thousand a year, every year, for the rest of your life, which leaves the thing almost everybody is quietly relying on without ever having checked it. Ask most people what the state pension is worth, and you'll get a shrug and a generous guess. It's a bit over £12,500 a year. Hold that against the 3 lives. It doesn't reach comfortable. It doesn't reach moderate. It doesn't reach the minimum, the one with the counted heating and no car. The thing everybody assumes will catch them lands, on its own, just underneath the bottom rung. And that's the full amount. Getting it depends on your national insurance record, broadly around 35 qualifying years for most people, though it gets more complicated the further back your record goes. An enormous number of people have gaps they've never looked at. Years on low earnings, years abroad, years when credits were missing or never claimed. So the state pension was never a retirement. It's the floor of the room. Everything else has to come from the number you were looking at on that laptop. Here's what actually happened to you. You were put into a pension, which was good. The level was set by somebody else, once, for everybody. Nobody ever told you it was a starting point. Nobody prompted you through 20 years of pay rises. Nobody chased the pots you left behind at old addresses. And once a year, an envelope arrived, in a format designed by somebody who has clearly never had to read one. And the cruelest part is the timing. A pension is the one financial thing where the ingredient that matters most is time. And time is the only thing you cannot buy back. A pound you put in at 25 has 40 years to work. The same pound at 55 has 10. Identical money, completely different job, so the information reaches you at precisely the moment it stops being useful. At 54 you can see the whole picture. At 22, when it would have changed everything, nobody put a single part of it in front of you. That isn't a personal failing, it's a design. You don't sleep especially well. At about 6 you give up, make a cup of tea, and open the laptop again. And then you do something you have not done once in 32 years of working. You start dealing with it. On the Wednesday you go looking for the job you left at 26. There's a government tracing service, and it's worth being clear about what it actually does, because it isn't magic. It gives you current contact details for old schemes. Who holds what now, after 30 years of companies buying each other and changing their names? It doesn't tell you whether you've got money there, and it won't tell you what it's worth. It tells you where to write. So you write. On the Thursday something comes back about a scheme you had genuinely forgotten existed. It isn't a fortune. It's 4 years of a young man's contributions, left alone since 1998. It's more than nothing, and it is unquestionably yours, and it had been sitting there the entire time you were telling yourself you'd sort it out one day. On the Friday you log into the payroll system before anyone else is in, and you change one number. Not dramatically. You can't conjure money you haven't got. 2%. And you work out what it'll actually cost you, which is less than you'd brace for, because a pound going into a pension doesn't necessarily cost you a pound. Depending on how the scheme handles tax relief, it can cost a basic rate taxpayer 80 pence. And while you're in there you notice a line you have never read in 12 years at this company, about the employer matching more if you put in more, which it has apparently been willing to do the entire time, without once mentioning it. Then you check your state pension forecast, which takes about 4 minutes, and find a gap from the 90s that you can do something about. And on the Sunday you open the forecast page again, and the number has moved. Not enough. Let's be honest with each other. Nowhere near enough to undo 30 years. Nobody fixes this in a week, and anybody who tells you otherwise is selling something. But it moved. And it moved because you did something, which makes it the first decision about your retirement you have ever actually made. It took a week. The one it replaced took 4 seconds. Somewhere this morning, someone is 22 years old, sat at a desk on their first day with a folder in front of them and their name spelled slightly wrong on the cover. The form is better than yours was. They'll be enrolled automatically, without having to ask, and there's a legal minimum going in, and that is genuinely progress. They'll get to the page with the box on it and the percentage already printed. They'll look at it for about 4 seconds, because retirement is not a real place when you're 22, and the person going through the folder with them, perfectly nice, and doesn't know either, is about to say the most expensive sentence anybody will say to them all year. Most people just leave it as it is, and they will. And in 30 years they'll sit on the end of a bed with a laptop, doing a password reset they've abandoned twice, and find out what that morning cost. Unless somebody tells them first. Because the number in your pension was never a verdict on how hard you worked. It's a receipt for a decision you didn't know you were making. And the only thing that has ever separated the two ends of this story is whether somebody said something while it still mattered. If someone in your life is still leaving it as it is, send them this video. And if you found it useful, subscribe to the channel and give it a like. It really helps the channel grow and reach the next person. I'll see you in the next one.